April 2013 forecast. We're going to start off the month with a lot of planetary influence in your 6th house. 6th house is a very practical place to be. You might find that there's a lot of focus on to-do lists, getting things done, making sure things are in order and you're on top of them. And you also have a new moon on the 10th of the month in that same house. So maybe you're going to start a new project. Maybe you're going to start a new diet. It's also the house of health and nutrition. So this might be a time where you're going to kind of start a new regime. New moons tend to signify the beginning of something. So either a project with regards to your work environment, a new venture going on there, or maybe even something to do with health. This is also the house of pets, so you might find that you're getting a new pet at that time. That's on the 10th. And the second half of the month, your planetary influence or your focus will shift over to your 7th house. 7th house is going to be a focus on others. The focus is not going to be on you. It's going to be on partnerships, whether they're romantic or business related. And it could be positive or negative. It's just a house that kind of highlights those close to you and kind of more committed relationships, not your real frivolous, it's not like a date, not that kind of romantic partnership. But if you're looking at romance, it would be more of a spouse or a longtime partner. Or if you're looking at business partners, but it can also be competitors or even rivals within some areas, some friends or frenemies, just someone that's really close to you, but it can either be a positive or a negative influence. Saturn is in your 1st house and it is retrograde. And Saturn is a very difficult planet to be in your 1st house. It's not always very fun, and it will be there for quite a while. So what Saturn does is it actually teaches you lessons, but it tends to teach them in a very hard way, through hardship and struggle. And from the time Saturn enters your 1st house to the time it leaves your 1st house, it tends to kind of knock down everything that you had built so that you can rebuild it all over again to be something bigger and better than it was before. But it's not always easy. I have a more detailed forecast at my website where I talk more in depth about this, but I had a good friend who, during his Saturn transit of the 1st house, his business was completely wiped out. He filed for bankruptcy and had to rebuild basically his life and his whole income. But he found that what he was doing at the end was even more profitable and just a better path for him. So even though it's not very pleasant, sometimes his influence just does what's best for you and puts you on just a better path according to the universe. The retrograde motion, what that will do is it kind of allows you time to go back and review things that you may have swept under the rug. This is going to be the time where you're going to be kind of forced to deal with it and to move forward with it at that point. Again, not always pleasant. Hopefully it won't go that, nothing too severe will happen, but it's definitely one where you have to struggle and you have to have a lot of patience. Nothing happens very quickly with the Saturn influence. You just have to keep plugging along and doing the right thing, and if you ignore it, it usually kind of has an even more forceful impact. So just work with it, try to stay on top of it, and be patient, and it'll pass eventually. Pluto is in your 3rd house, and that will also be going retrograde on the 13th of the month. Your 3rd house is a house of contracts, negotiations, communication. So Going retrograde, you might find that you're maybe getting into contact with old acquaintances, maybe even siblings that you've been out of touch with, or relatives that you've been out of touch with. So this is going to be a time where it really kind of your communication that's kind of lost its path. This is going to allow you some time to rebuild and renew that structure. Pluto is the planet of structure, and it tends to knock everything down to rebuild it. So yeah, with it in your communication sector, I think you'll find that maybe you're getting in touch with some old acquaintances, or even revisiting old contracts, things like that. There's a lunar eclipse this month on the 25th in your first house. Lunar eclipses, just take note, tend to be a little emotional. They tend to signify the endings of things. So maybe there's something, maybe this is tied into something with your Saturn influence where you're now dealing with something, and you're closing the door on one chapter of your life and you're moving forward in another. It'll be interesting to see how that influence affects Scorpios, and I would love to hear about it on my website, which is astrologykiki.com. And like I said, there's a more detailed forecast on the site for you if you want to have a look at that. Thank you.